So, nicknames. Nicknames and titles. Anybody have a good one they want to share with us? Mine growing up, the one that I hated, oh, thank you. I was looking for one of those. Oh, you're giving me extra. So, a nickname that I hated growing up, that my dad called me, was Doodlebug. I didn't even learn what that was until a couple years ago. I was reading a book and I discovered that that was a name of a destructive bomb in England. Like, thanks a lot. Like, so I just discovered, like, in my mid-40s that my dad had nicknamed me after a destructive bomb. Thanks a lot, Dad. Anyway, but nicknames. Anybody else have a good, anybody? Nobody's willing to share. What you got? Sparky. I can see that. So you don't get to tell the story as to why right now, but you guys afterward, now you have something to talk about after church, right? Other nicknames or titles? Yes. Ezzy. All right. How about here? You got Doodlebug too? So you were destructive too, huh? We feel together. Apparently it's not a gender one either, huh? All right, anybody, back here, yeah. Stinky? Did your husband give you that nickname? Okay. Your uncle. Appreciate those. Back here, anybody else? Yes, in the farm. Bobtail Mo. All right. How about titles? I look out here and I see people that I know have been CEOs, right? I see people. Any good titles you want to throw out there? Everybody's embarrassed now, right? They're like, we don't want to brag, but, well, I'm going to tell you, it's amazing how sometimes our nicknames and our titles, sometimes they're earned, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes we come by them by all these different ways. And I had a nickname that stuck with me for a number of years in the legislature and it was actually a title nickname that it was fun. So one day I am racing from committee and I go by my office, but I don't have time to stop. In my elevator, or the elevator was right next to my office. So I just swoop by it, I step into the elevator and I'm all dressed up. I'm headed to a committee meeting. And I look over, and there's this, young guy, early 20s and everything. I'm like, hey, how's it going? And I'm just chatting. I have 3 floors to chat. And he's like, oh, not very good. I'm like, oh, well, what's up? It's like, oh, well, I was supposed to have a meeting with Representative Stark, but he didn't show up. and just as I was about to apologize, and he says, but it's probably just as well anyway. I'm like, oh, really? Well, why is that? He said, well, I heard that he's this conservative redneck from Southern Oregon. And I was like, oh, interesting. And so we chat for just a moment, and as he gets out of the door at the bottom, actually at the next floor, and I hold the elevator for just a moment, and I ask him, I'm like, hey, so I didn't catch your name. What's your name? And I don't remember it now, and I don't know why I didn't make the appointment. It wasn't on my calendar. I don't know all those things. But anyway, I hold the door for a second because I wanted to make sure it was about to close. I'm like, hey, what's your name? And he's like, Adam. I just made that up, but, and he's like, how about you? And I'm like, oh, I'm Representative Redneck Stark, And so my staff caught on to that. So for years, I was Redneck Representative Stark. With these titles. And that was one I embraced. I enjoyed. But sometimes we have these titles, and sometimes they're good, or nicknames. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. Sometimes they bring us honor, and we find value and worth in that. And then sometimes we don't want anything to do with them. And it's very easy to allow ourselves to find our worth and our value based off of the things that other people call us and the other ways people see us. And so this morning, our text is going to go into, it's pretty interesting because Paul lays out 7 different areas of culture, including titles and all this. We're going to go through all of them. 7 different areas that culture told him were valuable. That if he wanted to find value in this world, these are 7 different categories that he could do that in, and he aces them all. And we're going to see what he has to say about all these titles that he has, all of these, you could say a nickname for some things. Okay, so we're going to look into that in just a minute. So we're in Philippians chapter 3. We're going to start with verse 1. He says, finally, my brothers, rejoice in the Lord. To write the same things to you is no trouble to me and a safeguard for you. So I'm going to pause it just there. Some of this gets redundant, you guys, Because Paul, he's just starting to the 3rd chapter of a 4-chapter book. So he's halfway through, and he's telling them the same things. And sometimes we need to hear the same things over and over. So if you've heard it before, that's okay. And he's telling them, look, it's fine. I'm telling you, rejoice always. I'm going to keep telling you to rejoice, to find your joy in who Jesus Christ is and not in the situation of your life. And he's going to tell them that over and over and over. He says it's a safeguard for you. Think about it, a safeguard. It keeps you traveling the direction you're supposed to go. Right? It keeps you from wandering off and getting hurt. So he says, I'm going to tell you these things again, rejoice again, because it's a safeguard. And then he tells them why. He says, verse 2, look out for the dogs, look out for the evildoers, look out for those who mutilate the flesh. For we are the circumcision who worship by the Spirit of God and in the glory of Jesus Christ, and put no confidence in the flesh, though I myself have reason for such confidence. He gets pretty worked up here. Okay, so he's warning them, look out, okay, watch out for these guys, these dogs. And when he's calling these people dogs, he's not saying, like a cute little puppy that you're going to pet. He's talking about a wild pack of dogs that comes in and ravishes and destroys everything. And he says, look out for these dogs, these mutilators of the flesh. And what this is about, what's going on here, is that there were guys going around, they're called Judaizers, going around saying, hey, well, you know what? That's great that you want to be a Christian, you can follow Christ, but you still have to be circumcised. And circumcision was a symbol, okay, throughout Israel, through all the Old Testament. It was a sign of God's covenant with the nation of Israel. And so when we get to the New Testament, there was this big controversy, like, do they still have to do this or not? All right, and he gets harsh with this because he's saying, you're mutilators of the flesh, okay? He's going extreme. And at this point, it's actually not about the physical process of this. Okay, what he's talking about is that they are finding their value. These guys are going around telling people that if you want to have salvation, you still have to perform outwardly to be with God. And he says that is not the way it is anymore. For all these years, yes, circumcision was this outward symbol that you were God's people, but not anymore. And we find out in Colossians 2 that circumcision is now, that Christ has now inwardly implemented, that our hearts have been cut clean and we are now God's people. He says, so Christ fulfilled that requirement. So it is no longer a requirement, and they even had these letters back and forth with the Jerusalem Council and so forth, and had them write these letters that said, hey, no, this isn't a requirement anymore. Because ultimately, it doesn't matter what you do. You cannot earn salvation. Now, what we do does matter, but it doesn't matter when it comes to trying to earn salvation. And he's going to break this down for us. So in verses 4 through 6, we get those 7 points here in just a moment. He says, if anyone else thinks he has reason for confidence in the flesh, I have more. Circumcised on the 8th day, of the people of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of Hebrews, as to the law, a Pharisee, as to zeal, a persecutor of the church, as to righteousness under the law, blameless. So most of that doesn't mean much to us, all right? So I'm going to break it down one by one and let you see how we actually are still today trying to find value in the same things that he lists out here. These 7 different things. But Paul, he says, look, I am the gold standard. And there aren't many people that I've met in life that actually can stand up and rightfully say, I'm the gold standard. If you want to do good according to what the world says, every category, I've met it. I've done well, I've done good. So his resume hits every single mark that the world would have. So we're going to break that down. First, he has an impressive pedigree. Hey, the idea of being circumcised on the 8th day, that was the requirement back then. And the whole thing was basically like, look, I've been brought up the way I was supposed to. My parents did what they were supposed to do. If I'm supposed to be with God, it's laid out before me. Everything is as it's supposed to be. If he was a dog himself, he would have been given a purebred certificate at the beginning. Okay, so I started life right. 8 days into this world, I was doing what I was supposed to do. That's it. And we say, you know what? I doubt that any of you, if we had a conversation on this, what's interesting, no, I won't go there. I had somebody call me recently asking me all about circumcision in modern day and should they not and everything. So I doubt that there's anybody in here who is going to look at one another and have a value and have that conversation and decide, oh, you are worthy or not worthy based off of whether or not you're circumcised. I've never heard that conversation in 29 years of ministry. Just haven't heard it. So how do we relate to that? But you know what we do, guys? We do put value today in, I was raised in the church, right? Like my parents took me to church. I was raised in the church. I went to Sunday school. I did everything I was supposed to be or supposed to do. Or I was baptized young. For some, maybe it was a sprinkling. Or my parents did what they were supposed to do. They dedicated me on stage. And the whole church prayed for me when I was a baby. Okay, those things are all good, but we can't put value in them in the sense of salvation. Those things do not lead to a relationship with Jesus Christ. They are positive things, but they do not lead to salvation. And that's this entire list of what Paul is making. He's like, so today, we may not relate to the physical of what Paul is doing, but we as a church do put value in those things, and sometimes too much value. Then next, and what a weekend for this one, his national identity. Okay? He's of the people of Israel. Israel, God's chosen people, right? Entire Old Testament, all of history is based off of following this people group. And how could it be anything more impressive than the nation of Israel, right? Now, we say that as Americans. I mean, this is touchy, right? We just sang, proud to be an American. And I tell you guys, I am proud to be American. I've traveled the world, been all over the place. There's no other country I'd rather be a citizen of. But Scripture tells us, and we're going to talk about this actually more next week in Philippians 3:20, that we are citizens of heaven first. Our true citizenship, our most valuable citizenship, is who we are in God's kingdom. Okay, so I'm proud to live here, proud to grow up here, proud that my son is in the military, proud that I spent 3 years trying to get in, and after 17 days, they kicked me out and sent me home because they didn't want me. You know, I'm proud to be part of this country. But guess what? No matter how good this country is, it doesn't save you. So whether you were born here or came here later, living here does not equate to righteousness with God. Never has, never will. And so never get that confused. So it continues on. So we have impressive pedigree, national identity, and he has an elite lineage. What do we mean here? Of the tribe of Benjamin. So he was from a faithful and respected tribe. Okay. This gets a little tricky, but if you go back to, we're only 3 kings into the history of Israel when the nation splits. And from the time the nation splits, there's Judah, Jesus comes from the line of Judah, and Benjamin. Those 2 tribes stayed together as the southern kingdom. The 10 other tribes, northern kingdom, they walked away, and if you read their history, not a single one of their kings ever honored God again. Whereas the southern kingdom had times where kings were wicked and times where they tried to honor God. Eventually they were wiped out as well. But Benjamin stayed faithful with Judah, and Judah had the honor of the Messiah coming out of Judah eventually. So Benjamin had this special place. It was a revered tribe. It is a kind of a right to say, hey, I'm of these elite. It's basically a family legacy. It's a reputation. It's status by association. I look down here, I think it's funny, and I'm not going to pick on you too much, but Duane keeps telling me that his bride is related to 90% of you guys. I'm just curious. If you somehow, family line, how many of you have some sort of relational tie to Susan here? Okay, 90% is an exaggeration. Maybe like 9%. I don't like to claim. Okay, but doesn't it have times where we can look at the founders of this church, or my great-grandpa did this, and we put value in our heritage and where we came from. But again, a good thing? Yes. A saving thing? No. All right? We can't put our value into that. And you might say, nobody really does that anymore. But you know what? You know what I've heard more at this church than I've heard at my church in Jacksonville. Mama didn't raise you that way. Right? I know your mama didn't raise you to do this. Or, hey, my parents didn't raise me to do this. Kind of the whole idea of, we don't, chew, cuss, or go with girls who do sort of thing, right? Like mama raised us right. Okay, we still, even to today, we put value in how we were raised. At least in the country we do, all right? In the city, they rebel and hate their parents. But, out here, we still will honor our parents, okay? But that doesn't, again, one more thing. So Paul's got this list of good thing, good thing, good thing. And, your elite lineage or whatever you were raised as, that can be a good thing. But one more thing that does not lead to salvation. Hebrew of Hebrews, it's a cultural credibility there. It's like, hey, among all those people, that's kind of like these days. You come out here and you'd be like, yeah, Duane Conrad, that's a man's man. He don't need gloves because he was born with leather hands, right? I mean, the other day I was fencing my fence and I just looked over there and I cut my hand and he said, here, let me grab that. And he just picked up the whole spool, throw it on his back like this, right? Okay, I mean, that's what he's doing here. Is like a Hebrew of Hebrews. I'm a man's man. I'm a people's people. Like among the people, he's of the honor. Like he fulfills the epitome of what he was supposed to be. But again, cool, right? Great. I wish I had leather Duane Conrad hands, but I don't. But no matter what, those hands aren't going to get him saved. Only the hands of Jesus Christ that were crucified will get him saved. So Paul's going down this list. Okay, well, you know what? I don't have Duane's hands. No, I actually had this one time where I went on a trip to the Congo, and the missionaries there, they said, hey, we only want a very small selective team, people that have actual skills that are beneficial to us. So we needed an airplane pilot, we needed a contractor, and we needed a farmer, and then we had me. I'm like, I can pray for you. So I ended up preaching the sermons the whole time I was there. I mean, it worked out. But it was like I didn't have all these other skills, so I found my value on that team in that I was the pastor, right? I had this religious achievement because someone had titled me with pastor, and so I could find some value in that, right? Guys, we still do that. Okay? Again, somebody goes to seminary, awesome. I love it. Somebody's been walking with Jesus for 57 years. Awesome. I love it. Somebody's been walking with Jesus for 2 days. I'm happy. Right? But those things aren't where we find our value. Okay? That's getting a little tricky on that one. Walking with Jesus, we will find value in that. I'm going to come back to that. But the boasting of it, I've achieved this status of it. I've achieved that I'm now a pillar of the church, or I'm a deacon or an elder. Okay, that title is not the value. Jesus Christ is the value. So again, he's chipping away at these things. He's saying all these things that everybody out here is probably fallen into one of these categories at some point. I've fallen into most of them. Or I can try to find my own worth and value in this. Religious achievement doesn't do it. Okay, it doesn't really matter if you're leading these groups. That's not what gets you saved. He says, okay, well, forget all this. Maybe the parents didn't raise you right, but how about passionate reputation? He's like, not only am I all this, I was also passionate about it. So much so that I loved God so much that if somebody didn't agree with me in my faith, I wanted to kill them. That is what Paul was doing before finding Jesus or meeting Jesus. He was going out so passionate about his faith and his relationship with God that he was persecuting and having Christians thrown in prison and put to death. That's pretty passionate. He's like, so you know what? Just getting up front with a lot of energy, a lot of excitement for your faith. You're the one who's going to run around and serve everybody all the time. Well, good. Not that those are bad stuff, but just don't think that that's what gets you to heaven. All these things. And then ultimately in external morality, he says, and as to righteousness under the law, blameless. I've actually never met someone who truly believed they were blameless. And Paul's like, listen, I've walked it. I've been the Pharisee. I've been the pastor. I've been the teacher. He's like, you can't find fault in my life. And he says, all of it's worthless. This gold standard is really fool's gold. You guys ever played with fool's gold? And I remember Applegate River when I was little. We lived right by the river. We'd go down and we'd get going. And without fail, over and over and over, I'd be like, Mom, Dad, I found gold. I'm so rich. And I'm super excited about this stuff. And they're like, yeah, that's fool's gold. I'm like, what do you mean? Yeah, it looks like it's something good, but it's not. Okay? Guys, these 7 categories, all of these external things that we can try to put our value or find our value and worth in, Paul just says, you know what? They're a bunch of junk. They're fool's gold. Don't be tricked by them, because that is what the world is feeding you of where you're to find your value. So let's take a look at what he says. And he says, we are to put Christ over our credentials. Picking up at verse 7, it says, but whatever gain I had, I counted as loss for the sake of Christ. Indeed, I count everything as loss because of the surpassing worth of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord. For his sake I have suffered the loss of all things and count them as rubbish, in order that I may gain Christ and be found in him, not having a righteousness of my own that comes from the law, but that which comes through faith in Christ, the righteousness from God that depends on faith, that I may know him and the power of his resurrection, and may share in his sufferings, becoming like him in his death, that by any means possible I may attain to the resurrection from the dead. And so we're going to look at here, Paul kind of breaks it down, or I'm going to break it down with what Paul's saying, into 4 different right things that we should be doing. Okay. First is we find the right balance. He says, anything I had was that I counted as gain is now loss. And he's using this. We've already talked about this in a previous chapter, the idea of a balance sheet. And he's saying, on a balance sheet, we have all of our profit and we have all of our loss. And on one side, all the things that he had as profit, his education, his knowledge, his upbringing, his family lineage, all these things, he had them in one column that was gain according to the world. And when he met Jesus Christ, it flipped all of that. And those columns flipped. And suddenly those are all in the loss column. He's saying those are a liability. Those won't get me to heaven. If I try to depend on those, they're going to leave me short of where I'm supposed to go. But on the other side, once I've flipped it and I have Jesus on the gain side, the knowledge of Jesus Christ, that is the one and only thing I need in my gain column. And everything else other than the knowledge of Jesus now lands in that loss column. And so we have to find that right balance, that we know what things are going into what column, that we take these things and we throw them over there. Okay, so it's kind of, we have all these achievements. We're like, oh, I'm going to literally move education, learning. In my mind, I'm going to move it over. I'm going to take it from one spot to the next, because those don't add up to knowing Jesus. Nothing in this world adds up to knowing Jesus. So in verse 8, he talks about the right value, this whole idea of the surpassing worth. I was thinking about surpassing worth. Again, it's the thing where, well, these things have value, but they're just not comparable. And so for whatever reason, I started thinking, I'm like, how can I picture this? And so I pictured an elephant and a mouse on a teeter-totter. Thanks, AI. The picture will be here in a second, I think. Maybe. All right. So if you have a scale or a teeter-totter, and a mouse is sitting there and an elephant comes and jumps on it, what happens to that stuff? What happens to that mouse? Boom, goes launching, right? It's not that there was something wrong with the mouse. It just doesn't add up. It doesn't weigh the same. It's not even close. It's not comparable. That's what he's saying here. He's saying the right value, we have to realize that the value of Jesus Christ surpasses the value of everything else. There is value in being a good dad. But knowing Jesus surpasses that value. So I can't find my value and my worth in that. Being a pastor, there's value in that. But knowing Jesus isn't even close to that value. They're just not even in the same category, you guys. And so all these different things. But I want to pause for just a second, and he doesn't address it here. Back to those nicknames for just a moment. You guys realize sometimes the things or the places we find our value are not from the positive things we've done. Right? There are nicknames that I've had. Somebody threw one out, Stinky. You know, I can guess what caused that nickname. All right? Now, sometimes we can take these other things that the world feeds us. We can look at our own sin and be like, man, I'll tell you guys, you know what? I got in an argument with my son 2 days ago. I was mad. I was really mad, okay? And I have to tell you, if I find my value in the way I behaved at that moment, don't worry, he's just fine. He's off at camp and happy, and we made up just fine. But he almost didn't make it. But if I find my value in who I am as a dad when I fail, like I can do that, right? Like sometimes, like it's not that often where I'm like, hey, super dad, I braided someone's hair properly this morning. Woohoo! No, by the way, I failed at that too. I tried. But if I find my value in who I am as a dad, whether it's a law or something that I failed at doing the way I wanted to or something I did positive, don't we find value in both of those? And we carry those all day long. We put those on. We can walk around in that shame. Or if I find my value not in the fact that I wish that I would have resisted partying on the 4th of July, and instead I drank too much beer. By the way, I don't really drink, but I'm just giving an example. But instead, I got drunk, and I acted like an idiot. And now I'm walking around the rest of the weekend thinking everybody thinks I'm an idiot. I must be an idiot. Man, I'm such a drunk. And I start carrying that, and I start viewing myself through that lens. Okay? Paul's saying all of these things, whether it's a negative thing you're finding your value in, or whether it's a positive thing you're finding your value in, they all get chucked compared to the value that we have in knowing Jesus Christ. The surpassing worth is so much more than those things. We can't find our value in any of those. We don't find salvation in those. We don't find our value in those. And so really, we need to figure out what pile we put it in. Okay, Paul uses the term here, rubbish. And scholars debate about this word. Scholars debate because rubbish can mean the trash. It can also just as easily mean dog excrement. Dog poop. Okay, and given the fact that a few verses earlier he was calling these mutilators of the flesh dogs, these people who were trying to find their value and their worth and their salvation from their works, he's calling them dogs. I actually think, and I would argue, that when it says rubbish here, he's talking about dog doo-doo. It's like you have this pile of dog doo-doo. All these things are basically, they're manure, you guys. Let me take this over here. This big bag of manure, right? And he's saying, if when you think about these things, you need to make sure you are putting things in the right pile. Again, I have Jesus over here, and I'm like, and he doesn't say it's just a little bit. It's like, no, I'm going to throw it in the pile. He goes beyond just sorting the categories to this is the crud pile, okay? This is the rubbish. This is the dung pile. So whether it's you partied too much last night, and you're finding your worth? Nope, I'm throwing that in the junk pile. Or whether it's, hey, I did everything perfectly this weekend. Nope, that goes in the junk pile. When it comes to finding our worth, we have to figure out what pile are you putting in, the Jesus pile or the dung pile? What's it go into? And every single thing that relates to what we actually do, apart from knowledge of Jesus Christ, he says, goes into that pile of rubbish, that dung pile. And instead, we put on the righteousness of Christ. I'm going to pause, go back to when I started in the legislature. When I was broke, I've been broke my whole life. I'm used to being broke. You know, it's good times. And but I owned one suit, and it didn't fit very well because I'd gained some weight. And then, so my wife encouraged me, go buy another suit. So now I wear a suit every single day, but I only own 2 suits. That's, and I'm on camera all day long, every day. What am I going to do with this? So I went to Goodwill. Thankfully, Goodwill, like somebody who probably fought in World War II, donated all of their sports jackets. And I went in and I found like 10 blazers that were my perfect size for $5 each. And so my entire first year in the legislature, I'm wearing like corduroy, okay? I'm wearing, I fit the dress code technically. And I had like 2 pairs of khakis. Everything went with khakis. That's what I decided. Every blazer goes with khakis. And so, so at the end of my first year there, a dear friend of mine, Dan, passed away. He died, unfortunately, from early onset of Alzheimer's. He died at age 52. And Dan's wife, who, again, I was super close with their whole family, Dan's wife had me come over, and she opened up the closet and said, here's Dan's wardrobe. You can have it. And I'm looking, he was a banker. Okay, now this is, it's been over a decade now. It's been a while. And I walked out of there with a dozen suits that cost from a couple hundred to well over $1,000. Fancy shoes, brands that I'd never heard of, that when I walked into the Capitol wearing those, like there were some guys that came over and were like, oh, those are, blah, blah. I still don't know the name of the shoe. And they're like, cool, like all of a sudden, like, and every day, and no joke, I thought about this every single day that I would put on Dan's suits. Every day I thought about bringing honor to Dan. And when I put on Dan's suits, it changes my day. It affects, I think, of who he is. So when I would get dressed, I'm sorry, my cord's getting in the way here. So when I get dressed, I put on the suit, and I would usually take a moment and say, thanks, Dan. Thank you that when I go to work today, I'm not going to feel like a slob. Thank you that people are going to comment on shoes that I don't even know what they are. Thanks, Dan, that I'm going to walk around and at least to a few people, I'm going to represent you today. You guys, God tells us that our mercy, or his mercy, is new every morning. And so every morning, we have the opportunity to decide how we are going to dress ourselves in value and worth. And we are told to put on Christ. That in the morning, we have the opportunity to say, Jesus, I'm going to be robed in your righteousness. And I'm going to, it's not about earning salvation. I've already given my life to you. But I'm going to go out today knowing that I'm walking around dressed in you, dressed in my best because of who you are. And I'm not going to walk around today finding my value in my titles. A title that someone gave me, whether good or bad. Or in my deeds, something I did right or something I did wrong. You know, it was an interesting thing. Driving to church this morning, completely out of nowhere. So I'm rocking out with my 3 little girls. And I love when they're in the mood to rock out because then we crank up the radio and I can't hear them arguing. And so good time. But every time they speak, I have to hit pause. And one of them starts talking, so I hit pause. And one of my daughters from the back, I have no idea what prompted this. She says, hey, Dad, you know what? Pause. What? Did you know that dogs eat their own poop? Well, honey, I think I've witnessed that, but hadn't really thought much about it. Thanks for letting me know this morning. Hit play. I don't know where it came from. I wonder if, when we say that, isn't that's so ridiculous of a thing? And I know we've probably all witnessed that, right? I wonder if when we get up in the morning, after having done something stupid the night before, and we walk over here and we get on the dung pile, I'm like, today I'm going to dress up in the fact that I failed last night. Today I'm going to find my worth or lack of worth in the fact that I drank too much, or that I yelled at someone, or that I looked at something that I shouldn't have. Today I'm going to find my worth in the fact that I'm looking good. I got a nice suit. I wonder if the world sees that as us eating our own dung. Because I tell you, you do that much, and you're going to walk around in the world, and when it comes to representing Christ, you're going to stink. We're going to nickname all you Stinky. But don't we have that choice every morning? And not just every morning, but throughout the day. He says, my mercies are new, you guys. He says, you have the option to get up and go live in what the world values or devalues. But all of that is nothing compared to the surpassing worth of knowing Christ. And so you have the option on how you're going to dress, how you are going to robe yourself today. Are you going to robe yourself in the righteousness of Christ? And know that Jesus Christ found every single one of you so amazing that not only did he create you, he died for you. That you were worth dying for. And then he's saying, hey, I want to walk with you today. I want to weep with you. I want to celebrate with you. So my encouragement for you guys this week, it's not my normal to-do list that I like to give people. My encouragement is daily, throughout the day, step back. When you're tempted to feel boastful inside or rotten inside, step back and go, you know what? Jesus, my worth isn't in that. My worth is in the fact that I'm robed in you, and I love you, and I just want to crawl up on your lap. And thanks for loving me, God. Let's pray.